Hello and welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Today we're talking about navigating power and influence. I need to admit this. Looking back at my career, I see more losses than wins because I failed to understand these two things. Number one, focus on professional goals rather than personal differences. And number two, power beats proficiency all day, every day. Keeping the first in mind helps leaders persevere through the politics and power play required to master the second. In this episode, we're going to talk about navigating power and influence. But before we get started, I would be so thrilled if you could do me this favor and subscribe to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Thank you so very much. So what am I talking about? Well, early on in my career, I really was a stickler for rules. I wanted to address every single thing that wasn't going well. And let me put it this way, I did not suffer fools gladly. And as a consequence, rather than really just focusing on the professional goals, the shared goals that brought us together, and looking at how I could navigate differences to make sure that at the end of the day, we collaborated toward that aim, I would nitpick at everything and lost more battles than I needed to. Matter of fact, I didn't even need to engage in these battles. So I learned the hard way that, hey, when you focus on the shared values, the shared goals that brought you together, you will find a way to influence those around you toward that aim. This isn't a place to now question people's morality and their approach and their behavior. I mean, there's a place as a leader to make sure that we are aligned on values and culture. But I lacked tact and wisdom, should I say, to address things well and to understand. Something that we're going to look at today is that people are both gatekeepers and door openers, and you need to understand how to effectively influence them so that things move forward rather than stagnate or even worse, regress. And I want to start by defining power. Power is the ability to influence decisions on access to resources. I'm going to repeat that. This is how I'm defining power. Power is the ability or the capacity to influence decisions on access to resources. So it answers the question, who gets access to what? And again, there are gatekeepers that can block you from accessing resources and accessing a certain allocation of resources. And they're door openers that can open doors to resources. And your job as a leader is to identify and effectively influence them to maximize your people's and your organization's power to access these resources, whether it's accessing people, accessing money, technology, buy-in, goodwill, etc. So you will hear me use power and influence interchangeably in this episode. So let's get right into it. What's the first step to maximizing your power? It is to map your stakeholders. So you're going to answer this question. Who are my stakeholders? This is both internal and external, whether they're directly impacted by you and the decisions you're about to make or indirectly impacted. So if it's at the company level, at the organizational level, you might think, okay, the shareholders, the board, senior management, managers, mid-managers, employees, investors, right? These could be your internal stakeholders. External would be regulators, customers, the government, the public, banks, etc. Please do not assume you know your stakeholders. Do not assume, because each time you're asking yourself, who are the people here that I need to be mindful of to be able to move forward, you're possibly looking at a different scenario. Your stakeholders in the team are different from your stakeholders in the department, different from a stakeholders organization wide, different from industry stakeholders. So take the time, do not assume, take the time to list out each group of stakeholders, and where possible, even find out the very name and title of the individuals in that group that you need to understand. Here's a pro tip. The more that is at stake, the deeper you should go in your research. So you might search on LinkedIn, then ask people who know them, who've worked with them, or know them personally. You may read documents they've published or listen to or watch them speak in some broadcast somewhere. You want to get to know your stakeholders well, because at the end of the day, it's human psychology. We're talking about people and how people feel and what people's interests are and where people stand on issues. And keeping this in mind is going to help you both at the individual and at the group level to better understand your stakeholders. The second question you're going to ask yourself is, what is their power/influence and interest in this very specific thing that you want to maximize your influence with them? What is their power, their influence, and their interest? And so this takes us to draw a stakeholder matrix. You've possibly seen these before. If you haven't, you have two axes rather. You have power and influence on the y-axis and then interest on the x-axis. The way that you're going to map your stakeholders is to draw 4 quadrants on this stakeholder matrix. The bottom left quadrant represents the people who have low power influence and low interest. These are people that you will have minimal contact with. Just keep them in mind that they exist. They have low power and influence, which means they cannot influence you to access the resources you want to access. And this is important because sometimes you might spend too much time on the wrong stakeholders. They're not going to help you move the needle forward. They're not going to open doors. They're not gatekeepers. They're not at the moment in this specific thing critical to decision making. So you're going to keep them in mind, but you're going to have minimal contact. Do not waste your resources, your time and attention on them. The top left quadrant is people that have high power and influence, but low interest. You're going to keep these people informed. You're going to keep these people satisfied. They have power to open or close doors to you. They may have low interest, but in a moment, right, you're going to keep monitoring them. In a moment, they could whisper, they could make a decision that would either jeopardize or accelerate your progress in what you want to do. The top right quadrant, these are your high power and influence and high interest stakeholders. These are the key players that you need to manage closely. You're going to regularly engage and work with them. You're going to make sure that they're informed, that you get their input, that they're kept up to date. Matter of fact, let me just put it this way, that they look good, right? That they look good, that when issues are addressed, they're informed, they can speak at whatever level they need to speak. Maybe it's at the 60,000 foot level, at the strategic level, or in detail. Either way, whatever they need, you make sure that they have it, because they can both grant or withdraw access to resources, and they're highly interested. They're highly vested in the outcome of what you want to achieve. And the bottom right quadrant are people who have low power and influence, yet high interest. They're highly interested in the outcome. They're highly interested in what's going on, but they're not going to be people who can open or close doors to you. Yet they're still your stakeholders. You're going to keep them informed. You're going to consult them because they're highly interested. You're going to consult them on, what they think, how things are going, etc., to get their input. But you're not going to sweat them as much as you're going to sweat the people who have high power and influence and high interest. Then the third thing you're going to do, after you have mapped out, you have identified your stakeholders, internal and external, or direct and indirectly invested in the outcome. You have already put them on your matrix, you see which quadrant that they fall in. I'd like you to now take that list of people that you had at the beginning and slot them into the quadrant you think they belong, right? So who belongs in the bottom left where they have low power and influence and low interest? Put their names there. Who do you think belongs in the top left, which is high power and influence but low interest? List the names there. Who is in the top right? High power and influence and high interest. These are your key players. You need to engage them. You need to manage them. You need to work closely with them. And who's in your bottom right? Low power and influence, but high interest. Put the names of the people that you had listed before for this very specific project or this specific issue or this specific initiative. Put them in the right quadrant. I don't mean the right side. I mean in the appropriate quadrant. Number 4 is identifying the resources they hold. Is it money? Is it leadership? Is it positional leadership? They're sitting on the leadership seat and then they sign off. Is it expert leadership? People tend to defer to them because they view them as the expert. Is it relational that they have access? And it could be formal or informal. It could be professional or personal access to maybe decision makers, and you want to list this down. Is it that they have experience? Have they been there for a long time, and so they know the ins and outs of the organization? Is it that they're in the public and they hold the public's heart and attention? Is it that they have equipment? Do they have the right location? What power, what resource do they hold? Put that in parentheses, put that in bracket next to their name. Now that you have a clear understanding of your stakeholder based on their power to influence your access to resources, you can strategize how to engage them according to their power and influence and interest in this very specific matter. Do not assume do not assume the very same people are interested or are pertinent, right? They're material, they're important for this endeavor. Do the work to actually map out who specifically is your stakeholder for this initiative. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'm going to ask you to do this. Right now, share it on one social media account and tag me, Modesta Mahiga, for a shout out. I appreciate you and I am rooting for you in your leadership journey. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next episode. Bye.